their successes so that we can learn from them. There are two ways a man learns. We learn by instruction, we learn by experience. So most of the time it's better to learn by instruction than to learn by experience. Because there are certain things you learn in life that leave you with a scar. And those scars will be there for life. But you would have learned your lesson. But you have the option of learning by instruction. So if you don't learn by instruction, what you don't learn by instruction, you learn by experience. So the Bible is an open book for us to look at people's life. And you know, at times when we look at the people's life that carries life, that minister life to us, at times when we read Psalm, you know that Psalm is the prayer of somebody. So at times I look at myself, can we have a record of our own prayers? If they are not selfish prayer that your enemy will die. The psalmists also pray at times that God, that his enemy will die. But you know that that's not the focus of his prayer. So today we are looking at the life of Gideon. It's a story that we all know about. But we will, just within the time that we have, look at certain things we can learn from his life. Because the Bible told us that these are written for our examples. So when we have examples, we don't need to fall into the same pit they fell into. So we are taking let me read our memory verses in our Bible passage. So we will read the Bible passage. That is Judges 6:11-16. That's not the complete story of Gideon, but we'll just take that part of it. Judges 6:11-16. So let me read from here. Say, and there came an angel of the Lord and sat under an oak, which was in Ophrah, that pertained unto Joash the Abizarite, and his son Gideon threshed with by the winepress to hide it from the Midianites. So we need to put this in context and understand the season of life of Gideon. What was happening in his time. So unfortunately, he grew up at a time that the Israelites were being oppressed by the Midianites and the Amalekites. And the oppression was so much that they allowed them to plant seed, to plant their vineyard. And when at the time of the harvest, that's when the enemy will come. Can you imagine that somebody, you have worked, and it is time that your salary comes, that your bi-weekly comes. That's when problem comes to consume the money. That was what they were experiencing. It was a cycle. The Bible told us that they became impoverished, that they now turned to poverty, that they now ended in lack because the enemy actually targets their time of harvest. That was the season that Gideon grew up. But it wasn't that God was wicked. But the Bible told us that they forsook the Lord their God and they begin to worship Baal. They begin to worship idol. That opened them up to attack. God is their defense, no doubt. But what opened up their life to the attack of the enemy was their sin, was because they departed from God. So this is the time. That was why we can see that winepress, the Bible told us it was threshing wheat by winepress. Wheat, they don't thresh wheat in winepress. It should be threshing wine in winepress. But the Bible told us that the tactics that they discover, that is the strategy they were now using to hide from their enemies, was to now be threshing wheat inside winepress, to just camouflage, so that they will think it is wine, and say, we don't need their wine. But if it is wheat, we go after that one. So that was the season that it was of his life that we want to actually look at. It said, and the angel of the Lord appeared unto him and say unto him, the Lord is with thee, thou mighty man of valor. And Gideon said unto him, O my God, if the Lord be with us, Why then is all this befalling us? And where be all his miracles which our fathers told us about, saying, did not the Lord bring you up from Egypt? But now the Lord has forsaken us and delivered us into the hands of the Midianites. And the Lord looked upon him and said, go in this thy might, and thou shalt save Israel from the hand of Midianite. Have I not sent thee? Okay, verse 15. Yeah, we'll stop at verse 16 so that we can just run through the rest of the study. And he said unto him, O my Lord, wherewith shall I save Israel? Behold, my family is poor in Manasseh, and I am the least in my father's house. And the Lord said unto him, surely I will be with thee, and thou shalt smite the Midianite as one man. No, I love Gideon. One of the things we can learn from this introduction is that he was a man that was conversant with history. He knew what has happened in the past. So he saw it as, so if God be for us. And one other thing that you can see from here, he never acknowledged that the people sinned. It was as if it is God's fault. That God, you brought us here and you just decided to change your mind. No, there are times that when we don't admit where we are wrong, we are not seeking for solution. All he could say to God was complain. There was no self-examination. There was no part of it that he said, it's because we have sinned. No, he said, God, you brought us here. And later you change your mind. You now forsake us. You now abandon us. But what they did on their part, they never acknowledged that. But we are going to see as we go on. But the response of the angels to him is one of the things that I felt we should look at as we go to our introduction. So it was as if the angel didn't hear what he said. And the angel just said to him, thou mighty man of valor. It was like, you didn't hear what I just said. So at that when God gives us response to our prayer, it's like he doesn't reckon with what we have said. So God looks beyond his circumstances. And God addressed him of a man that he was in destiny. I said, you are what he called you, not what your circumstances call you. When Abraham, you know there are lessons in the Bible that we need to, that as we learn them, we appropriate them to ourselves. We look at it in our days. How can God change the name of Abraham to Abraham? Abraham means father of nations, yet he has no child. So a man may not have money in his pocket today, and God said you are a blessing, but he can't see it. Most of the things when we can't see, we reckon with what God has said about us. Most of the time, what God said about us, we don't see them right away. So when God called him mighty man of valor, he now asks, how can a mighty man of valor be hiding from enemies? So there are times that the word that God has spoken to us contradict our situations. But we choose at such time to believe what God has said. That's how to triumph. We believe what he has said. Can you remember, can you imagine they calling somebody father of nations? I said, where is the nation now? You don't have children and they are calling you father of nations. Where is he coming from? But that is the way God works. So there are times that God would have spoken to you. You don't see it, but you believe it. You trust the person that has spoken. That was what we as we look at it in our study yesterday, we look at it that, do you know that this same Gideon was mentioned in Hebrews chapter 11. It was mentioned in the hall of faith. And when you look at his life, you will feel that it's a man that doubted God. No. He was looking at himself compared to what God can do. And he saw that it's nowhere around. He saw his own insufficiency compared to the burden that God has placed on him. But what we're saying, we established is this. God see him in destiny, not in his circumstances. So let's quickly go to our introduction.